Saturday lunch. The lobby of Laurel House on Biltmore Avenue, Asheville. Pierce Holloway walked in wearing a gray flannel and faded jeans, boots scuffed from the gravel drive. Cyrus Vaughn looked him up from the boots to the collar. "Sir, this is a private establishment. We enforce a dress code. I'm afraid we can't seat you today." Pierce said nothing. His eyes moved to the brass plaque behind the host stand. Holloway Hospitality Group Est, 1958. He turned and walked out. Behind him, Cyrus was already smiling at the next guest. Sidewalk. Asheville Sun. Pierce read the name on the glass. Holloway. His name. What would you have done if a stranger turned you away from your own front door quietly, in front of paying strangers, on a day that already cost you everything? Some men shout. Some men leave. The man on the sidewalk had not decided yet. 4 years earlier, on a hospital chair in Chapel Hill, Pierce Holloway had held his wife's hand and promised her 2 things. The first was that he would not let their daughter grow up afraid of the world. The second was that every June, on the Saturday closest to the day Helena was gone, they would eat at the corner table by the bay window at Laurel House, where Helena had once tipped a sommelier $10 for letting their toddler color on a napkin. It was the 3rd Saturday in June. That morning, Bea had brushed her own hair, picked out a navy dress, and waited at the front door with her sketchbook under her arm. She was 8 years old. She drew a cardinal in pencil during the drive into town. She did not ask why her father parked in the public lot 2 blocks down instead of using the restaurant's valet. She rarely asked things. She watched. Pierce slid back into the driver's seat and closed the door. The leather smelled like coffee and old paper. Bea looked up. "Did they not have our table, Daddy?" He breathed out through his nose. "They had something better. Quieter. The bistro right next door." She nodded once, the way she always did when she sensed there was a sentence underneath the sentence. Inside Laurel House, at that exact minute, Sutton Bellamy was being led to the corner table by the bay window. Cyrus Vaughn had read her reservation in the book Bellamy S1 and recognized the name from the masthead of Asheville plate. He pulled out her chair himself. He recommended the soft-shell crab. He said it would be his pleasure to send out a glass of the new Burgundy on the house. Sutton thanked him without smiling. She placed her phone face down on the linen. She had been a critic for 12 years. She knew what a manager looked like when he was performing. Through the bay window, she watched a man in a flannel shirt cross Biltmore Avenue with a small girl. He was holding her hand and bending toward her as she pointed at something on the sidewalk. He bent the whole distance, not from the waist but from the knees, so his face stayed level with hers. Sutton did not know him. She noticed the bend anyway. At the bistro, Pierce ordered Bea a grilled cheese with apples and stepped outside to make a call. Carolina picked up on the second ring. "Pierce, something is very wrong at Laurel House." "How wrong?" "Wrong enough that I want the last 24 months of full books on my desk Monday morning. Every line, every signature, including the GM." Silence. Then, "Are you coming in?" "Yes." He came back to the table. Bea had drawn 3 more cardinals along the margin of the paper placemat. She looked up at him over her milk. "Daddy." "Yeah, honey. Was that lady at the restaurant pretty?" Pierce paused with the sugar packet halfway to his coffee. He did not know which lady she meant. He had not, consciously, looked at any lady. He set the packet down. "I didn't notice, baby." Bea went back to her cardinals. She did not believe him. He watched her finish a 4th cardinal, wings half raised, on the verge of leaving the branch. He thought, not for the first time, that she drew the way some children prayed. He thought about the corner table by the bay window and about the man standing in front of it. He decided that whatever happened next would not happen because he had lost his temper in a public room. It would happen because he had not. Monday morning. The 14th floor of the Latham Building, downtown Asheville. The Holloway Hospitality Group had occupied the corner suite since 1971, when Pierce's father had moved the offices from a converted house on Charlotte Street. The view from Carolina Holloway's window ran across the rooftops to the blue smudge of the Pisgah ridgeline. Carolina had 3 folders open on her desk and a 4th in her lap. 28%, she said, before her brother had finished closing the door. "That's the revenue drop at Laurel House over the last 24 months. The other 11 properties are flat or up. Laurel is bleeding." Pierce sat across from her. He had not been in this office in nearly 4 years. The chairs were the same, The carpet had been replaced. What does Cyrus say? Cyrus says it's the new competition on Lexington. Cyrus says it's brunch fatigue. Cyrus says the demographics have shifted. And the audit? The audit says 3 so-called consulting fees in the last 14 months were paid into an LLC whose registered address is the same as Mr. Vaughn's home in Black Mountain. Pierce closed his eyes briefly. He did not raise his voice. He had not raised his voice since the morning of Helena's diagnosis. How did we hire him? Through the standard process. 3 years ago, he came recommended by the regional director of a Charlotte hotel group. His references were impeccable, and his first 12 months he ran a tight ship, margins up 6 points. He won the staff over. He won me over. You never told me he existed. You told me, when you handed me the day-to-day, that you did not want to be told. Pierce nodded. That was true. After Helena died, he had walked away from every email chain, every quarterly review, every dinner with a developer. He had kept only the chairman's seat, dormant, and the right to know nothing. 2 board members, Carolina said. Whitman and Reese. They have had 3 private dinners with Cyrus in the last 6 weeks. Cyrus has been pitching them on spinning Laurel House off as a standalone entity. He would buy a minority stake. They would supply the rest. Of my flagship, of your flagship. Pierce sat for a long moment. Outside, a hawk slid past the window and dropped out of sight toward the river. I'm not going to fire him today, he said. Pierce, I want to see how he runs the room when he doesn't know anyone is watching. I want to see how he treats people who look like me. Carolina did not argue. She had learned, long before their father died, that her brother slowed down precisely when other men sped up. That night, Pierce sat at the far end of the bar at Laurel House. Same flannel, different boots. The bartender, a man named Otis who had worked the Saturday brunch shift for 9 years, set down a coaster and opened his mouth. The usual, Mr. Just water tonight, Pierce said. Otis closed his mouth. He poured the water with both hands. He did not look at Pierce again for the next 20 minutes. 2 stools down, a woman with chestnut hair was reading a tasting menu and making small marks in the margin with a felt pen. She had been there since 7. She had ordered the duck and barely touched it. She looked up when Pierce sat down. She looked back at her menu. Then she looked up again. You come here often? Sutton Bellamy asked. I know the place, Pierce said. She did not ask his name. He did not ask hers. They spoke for 38 minutes about food. She mentioned the duck. He said the kitchen had probably switched fat. She raised an eyebrow. He said duck this dry was usually a sign someone had stopped rendering in goose fat and gone to canola to save $80 a week. She wrote that down in the margin. They moved on to country ham. She said the best ham she had ever eaten was in a gas station outside Lexington, Virginia. He said that was probably Edwards out of Surrey. She said yes. How did he know? He said the salt cure had a particular finish you only got from a coastal cure house, and Edwards was the last one running it the old way. Are you a chef? She asked. No. A purveyor? No. You used to be in the business. He considered her over the rim of the water glass. I grew up in it, he said. She accepted that. They talked about sorghum, about the difference between a low-country boil and an Appalachian fish fry, about how nobody under 40 in this town knew what to do with a properly aged cornmeal. He did not show off. He answered when asked and did not embroider. Sutton, who had spent 12 years sitting across from men who embroidered, found the absence of embroidery interesting. Cyrus Vaughn walked the floor at 10:15. He passed the bar with the practiced slow stride of a man who liked to be seen passing the bar. He stopped at Pierce's stool. Sir, I believe I made our policy clear earlier. The bar is for paying patrons. Sutton turned her head. She had been a critic long enough to recognize a deliberately public sentence. Pierce did not look at Cyrus. He took a $20 bill from his wallet and laid it under the coaster. He looked at Sutton. He nodded once, small and even, the way a man nods to a neighbor across a fence. He stood up and walked out. Sutton watched him go. She watched Otis the bartender wipe the same spot on the wood 3 times without looking up. She watched Cyrus turn on the smile that was not for her but for the room. She picked up the 20 and put it back in the tip jar herself. At home that night, she sat on the floor of her apartment on Cumberland Avenue, with her laptop on the coffee table and a glass of red beside it. She typed Holloway Hospitality into the search bar. The home page was almost defiantly bare. A logo, a list of properties, no leadership team, no press contacts. She went deeper. Page 4 of the results, she found a society column from a children's hospital gala, dated 5 years earlier. A photograph of a man in a tuxedo with his hand at the small of a blonde woman's back. The caption read, "Pierce and Helena Holloway, chairing the silent auction." The man's face was turned half away from the camera, laughing at something his wife had said. Sutton enlarged the photograph. She held her glass without drinking from it. She put it down. She put the laptop down too. The man at the bar had not been laughing, but the line of the jaw was the same. She closed the laptop. She told herself she would sleep first and decide in the morning whether she had decided anything. Tuesday morning. The house was a one-story bungalow off Town Mountain Road, with a screened porch and a sycamore in the yard that had been struck by lightning the summer before and was now slowly dying in elegant stages. Bea sat on the window seat with her sketchbook on her knees. A male cardinal was working a dogwood branch 6 feet from the glass. She drew it without looking up. Pierce stood at the kitchen counter in his socks, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. 3 transfers, Carolina was saying. 22,000, 41,000, 18,000, all booked as consulting, all to an LLC called Ridgepoint Concepts. Ridgepoint Concepts is registered at Cyrus Vaughn's home address. The notary on the formation paperwork is his cousin, and legally, Cole at Henning Cole has the file. He says we have enough to move now. Termination for cause. Civil recovery. He thinks the district attorney will take it once we package it. Hold off. Pierce. 1 more week. I want to see who else is sitting at his table. Whitman and Reese had dinner with him again last night. At his house, Pierce was quiet. He's circling, Carolina said. He knows you've been in town. Otis told him you sat at the bar. Did Otis know who I was? Otis has known who you are since he was a busboy at the Grove Park in 2004. Otis would walk into traffic for you. He didn't say a word. Pierce looked over at Bea. She had added a second cardinal, the female, done in red. She erased something. She started again. 1 more week, he said. That afternoon, he took her to the bookstore on Wall Street, because on Saturday afternoons, it had a story circle for the under-10s, and because Bea liked to sit at the bottom of the stairs and watch the older children read out loud. They had been there a quarter of an hour when she looked up from a book about owls and went very still. Daddy. He followed her eyes. Sutton Bellamy was standing in the natural history section, holding a hardback called Birds of the Carolinas. She had been holding it long enough to realize she was holding it. She looked up at the same time Bea did. Daddy. The lady from the restaurant. Pierce did not move from his place by the staff picks table. Sutton did not move from hers by the shelf. Across 2 aisles of paperbacks they looked at each other for what felt like a full breath, and was, in fact, 2. Sutton walked over. She did not look at Pierce. She knelt in front of Bea. You like cardinals? Bea showed her the inside of the sketchbook without speaking. Sutton turned the book in her hand over once. She held it out. This one is better than the one I have at home. It belongs to a girl who can already draw. Bea took the book with both hands. Sutton stood. She and Pierce shared one more look, half a question on each side, no answer on either. Then she walked out of the store without paying for anything else and without saying goodbye. That night Bea opened the book on her bed and turned to the first plate. It was a cardinal, male, on a dogwood branch, the same branch she had been drawing all week. Wednesday morning. The Asheville plate office on Church Street. Sutton's editor, Lenore Bashir, slid a printed brief across the desk. Service inequality in fine dining. Long form, 6,000 words. We'll run it as a cover. Anywhere specific? You pick. Start somewhere with a name. Sutton picked Laurel House. For 3 days, she went back at staggered hours. Wednesday lunch, Thursday dinner, Friday brunch. She wore a different coat every time. She watched. On Wednesday at 6:40, Cyrus turned away a man in a polo shirt who said he was meeting his daughter for her birthday. The book had openings. Cyrus said reservations only, with regret. The polo shirt man's daughter, in a black dress, arrived 12 minutes later and was seated immediately. On Thursday at 7:10, Cyrus turned away a woman in scrubs who had walked over from Mission Hospital. He explained the dress code with the same regret. On Friday at 12:15, Cyrus turned away an older couple in clean jeans and pearl snap shirts who had driven down from Yancey County for their 40th anniversary. He told them about a charming diner 3 doors up. Sutton filmed all of it. Her phone sat in her open handbag, propped against the lining at an angle she had worked out at home in front of a mirror. Saturday morning she walked through Pack Square Park with a coffee. The air smelled like cut grass and the diesel of the trolley line. She was not looking for Pierce Holloway. He was by the fountain, with Bea throwing crumbs to a careful committee of pigeons. Bea saw her first and waved. Bea was 8 and had decided, in the bookstore, that Sutton was a person who could be waved at. Pierce and Sutton sat on the bench 3 feet from each other and watched Bea negotiate with the pigeons. "I'm writing something," Sutton said after a while. "I figured I'd like a quote, anonymous, from somebody in the industry, about what the rules at the door are actually supposed to mean." Pierce thought about that. He took the folded receipt out of his shirt pocket and the pencil out of Bea's bag, and he wrote a phone number on the back of the receipt and handed it to her. "Call me Monday. After 10, she put the receipt in her wallet, behind her license. He did not ask what she was going to write. She did not ask what he had been on Monday night at the bar. Bea ran out of crumbs. Bea came back to the bench. Bea climbed onto her father's knee and asked Sutton if she had ever seen a goldfinch up close. Sutton said no. Bea said she could show her one in the book sometime. That night, Sutton went back to Laurel House one more time. She wanted footage of a Saturday rush. She got it. And then, at 9:46, Cyrus Vaughn appeared at her elbow with 2 waiters at the periphery and a smile that did not include his eyes. "Miss Bellamy, I think it's time you left. And I'll be reaching out to your editor in the morning." He stepped close enough that she could smell the bay rum on his collar. "You don't know what I have," he said quietly, "but I know what you have. Be careful." She left. She did not look at her hands until she was inside her car. They were shaking. Edith Pomeroy had worked the front desk at Laurel House since 1983. She had hired 3 generations of hostesses. She remembered every regular by their drink and most by the name of their first dog. She was 60 years old, and her hands had begun to shake in the last year, and Cyrus Vaughn had recently asked her, with concern, whether the work was becoming too much. She called Carolina Holloway at 9:48 on Saturday night, on the personal line that Carolina's mother had given her in 1996. "Honey," Edith said, "I have something your brother needs to see. I have been holding on to it for 2 years." Sunday morning at 10, Edith walked into the 14th floor office in a navy church dress and laid a small black thumb drive on Carolina's desk. "There are 4 files on there," she said. "One is sound. One is the payroll for last September. One is a screen capture of an account I should not have been able to see. One is the lobby camera from yesterday morning, 11:52 to 12:36. Carolina did not touch the drive yet. "Edith, why now?" Edith took a long breath. The dress had a small silk rose on the lapel, the kind older Southern women wore to weddings and funerals interchangeably. "In 1986, your mother paid the tuition shortfall on my Marcus's first year at Davidson. She did it without telling him and without telling me. I only found out from the registrar at his graduation. She made me swear I would never mention it. I have not. I am mentioning it now because your mother would have wanted to know what I know, and she is not here, and you are." Carolina put her hand on the drive. "Your mother would have wanted to know, sir," Edith said again, looking past Carolina, as if Pierce were already in the room. The audio file ran 4 minutes. Cyrus's voice, low, telling a young waiter that if he kept miscounting the tip pool, he would find his hours cut to nothing, and a bad reference waiting for him at every restaurant in Buncombe County. The payroll spreadsheet showed 3 names: Darrell K., Susan P., L. Mendez, that nobody on staff recognized, each drawing a paycheck routed to Ridgepoint Concepts LLC. The screen capture showed a private email Cyrus had sent to a man at a Charlotte hotel group offering, in writing, to deliver Laurel within 90 days. The camera was the one that mattered. 11:52 on Saturday morning. Pierce walking into the lobby. Cyrus's mouth moving as he leaned in toward Haley, the new hostess. The audio on the lobby camera was supposed to be inactive. It was, in fact, active, and had been since a maintenance contract Edith had signed off on in 2022. "I don't like the look of him," Cyrus said on the recording. "Get rid of him." Carolina played it twice. Then she called Henning Cole and scheduled an emergency board meeting for Wednesday morning. 48 hours. Cyrus would be told it was a routine performance review. Monday at 9:40, Sutton walked out the back door of the Asheville Plate Building and found Cyrus Vaughn leaning against her car. "I had a conversation with Lenore this morning," he said. "I do not think the conversation went the way I would have liked. I think we should have one of our own." She stepped back. He stepped forward. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the folded receipt with the phone number on it. She walked 5 steps down the sidewalk, turned her back, and called. Pierce picked up on the first ring. She told him, in 12 words, where she was and what was happening. He gave her his address. 40 minutes later, she sat across from him at his kitchen table for the first time, with no bar and no bench and no bookstore shelf between them, and watched him pour her a glass of water with the steady hand of a man who had decided, somewhere on the drive over, that the week of watching was finished. Bea was asleep on the couch when Sutton arrived. The bird book was open across her chest, pages down. The dog, a slow elderly golden named Honey, was curled at her feet and did not bother to lift her head. Sutton spoke for 20 minutes. She did not raise her voice, and she did not soften anything. The footage, the hostess, the tip pool, the man in the parking lot. Pierce listened with his hands folded on the table. He did not interrupt. When she was finished, he said, "I think I owe you something." He took an old leather billfold out of his back pocket. From an inner sleeve he drew a single card, slightly bent at the corner. The print faded along one edge from where it had ridden against a key ring for a long time. He set it down between them. Pierce Holloway, Chairman, Holloway Hospitality Group. Sutton did not pick the card up. She looked at it. She looked at the man across the table in the gray flannel and the work-stained hands. She looked at the card again. "Saturday morning," she said. "Yes." He turned away. "The chairman of the company that signs his paycheck." "Yes." "And you walked out." "I walked out." "Why?" Pierce thought about it. "Because if I had told him who I was on the sidewalk," he said, "I would have learned what he does when he gets caught. I would not have learned what he does on a regular Saturday." She nodded once. She did not say anything for a while. The refrigerator hummed. The dog sighed. "I have footage," she said finally. 3 days of it. "I know. My piece is going to run. I am not pulling it for you. I'm not asking you to." She picked up the card. She put it in the breast pocket of her shirt, over her heart, where it sat against the receipt with his phone number written on the back. Wednesday morning, 9 o'clock. The 8th floor boardroom of the Latham Building. Cyrus Vaughn arrived at 8:55 in a slate blue suit, with the easy walk of a man who had been told he was being given a commendation. He nodded to Whitman. He nodded to Reese. He sat to Carolina's right. Carolina opened a leather folder. "Cyrus, thank you for coming in. We would like to walk through the last 24 months at Laurel House." For 18 minutes, she walked through it. Revenue. Cost of goods. Labor. The 3 consulting payments. Cyrus, smooth and ready, attributed 2 of the payments to a vendor reclassification error in accounting, and the third to a settlement with a former dishwasher that had been mishandled by HR. The boardroom door opened. Pierce Holloway walked in. He was wearing a dark charcoal suit, a white shirt open at the collar, no tie. His hair was combed. He was clean-shaven. He looked, for the first time in nearly 4 years, exactly like the man in the gala photograph Sutton had enlarged on her laptop. He crossed to the head of the table. He pulled out the chairman's chair, the one that had sat empty at every meeting since the spring of 2022. He sat down. Cyrus's face did something that the room would later, in private, describe with different verbs. Most of them involved a draining. "Good morning," Pierce said. He nodded once at Whitman. He nodded once at Reese. He looked at Carolina. "I'd like to add one item to today's review." He set the thumb drive in the center of the table. It rolled half an inch and stopped. The audio on the lobby camera was clearer than anyone in the room had expected. Cyrus's voice carried as if he had been mic'd. The board listened. Whitman did not move. Reese studied the surface of the table. "I don't like the look of him. Get rid of him." The room held. Cyrus cleared his throat. "I didn't recognize him. He was dressed like a customer," Pierce said. "Yes." Henning Cole was at the side of the room, in the seat reserved for outside counsel. He stood up and walked to the table and laid 2 stapled documents in front of Carolina. "We have 2 motions," Carolina said. "The first is to refer the financial irregularities at Laurel House, the Ridgepoint payments, the phantom payroll, and the unauthorized solicitation of board members for an outside acquisition to the District Attorney's Office for criminal review. The second is to formally terminate any and all ongoing discussions regarding the divestiture of Laurel House and to bar any board member from engaging in such discussions in the future without full board notice. Cyrus was no longer trying to speak. The first motion went around the table. Carolina, yes. Pierce, yes. Eleanor Park, the finance hire from the spring, yes. Joaquin Reyes, yes. Whitman abstained. Reese, no. 2 more members nodded yes. One, the youngest, a 32-year-old named Avery Hunt, whom Cyrus had taken to dinner twice in the last month, paused with her pen above the page. Carolina did not look at her. Pierce did not look at her either. The room simply waited. Avery Hunt looked at the still frame on the projector. Cyrus's mouth, mid-sentence, mid-order, on the lobby camera. She looked down at her pen. Yes, she said. The first motion carried. The second motion was unanimous. Whitman and Reese did not have the standing to vote no on a procedural bar that named them by reference. Cyrus Vaughn stood up. He buttoned his suit jacket. He looked at Pierce as if waiting for some final exchange, some line, some chance to perform regret in a way that might soften the next 30 days. Pierce did not give him one. Cyrus walked to the door. The door closed behind him. No one watched him through it. In the hallway, Sutton had been sitting in one of the leather chairs by the elevator since 7:40. She had not been admitted to the meeting. She had not asked to be. She had a notebook on her lap that she had not opened. She had finished 1 cup of coffee and not started another. The boardroom door opened. Pierce came out first. He saw her. He walked the length of the hallway and stopped at her chair. He did not sit. She did not stand. "I should have known," she said. "How?" "The way you talked about country ham." He smiled then. It was the first smile he had made in 4 years that did not require effort. It was small and entirely surprised, as if he had not known the muscles still worked. They stood at the window together for a long time. The hawk that lived in the parking deck went by again, lower this time, hunting. Below them, on Biltmore Avenue, the Saturday traffic had not yet started. They did not touch. They were looking the same direction. Edith Pomeroy received her appointment letter on the 2nd Monday of August. The new title was Director of Guest Experience. The position had not existed before. Carolina had drafted it on a Sunday afternoon, by hand, and Pierce had signed it at her kitchen table. Edith cried at her desk for 20 minutes, and then went down to the basement and threw out the reading glasses Cyrus had given her at the last staff Christmas party. The 4 employees Cyrus had cut hours from were reinstated by the end of the week. 22 months of skimmed tip pool was repaid in full, with interest calculated by Carolina on a legal pad and double-checked by Henning Cole. 2 line cooks who had quit during the Vaughn era were called and asked to come back. Both said yes. On the second Saturday after reopening, a woman in scrubs walked into the lobby still wearing her hospital ID badge. Edith seated her at a window table without comment. The woman ordered the soft shell crab, the same dish Cyrus had once offered Sutton on the house, and ate it without looking up from her phone, the way people eat when they have been holding their breath for a long time. Laurel House reopened on a Thursday. A small sign was set into a brass frame just inside the lobby door, where the brass plaque about the company's founding had always been. "Every guest is welcome at Laurel House. There is no dress code at our door." The Mountain Express ran it on page 3. The Asheville Citizen-Times ran it on the front page of the food section. A blog out of Charleston picked it up and ran a feature on it, as part of a wider piece on the new generation of Southern hospitality. Haley, the young hostess who had said the words to Pierce on the Saturday in June, came back to the lobby in early September and asked Edith if she could have her job back. Edith took her hand for a moment. She thanked her for coming in. "The position is filled, honey," she said, "and you will be all right." That afternoon, a single email arrived at Pierce's office, forwarded by Carolina with no comment. Cyrus Vaughn requesting a meeting, 15 minutes, anywhere. Pierce did not reply. Sutton walked into Lenore Bashir's office on the day her investigative piece went to layout. She closed the door behind her. "I need to disclose something," she said. She told Lenore about the bench at Pack Square, about the bookstore, about the kitchen table, about the card in her shirt pocket. She asked to be moved off any future review of any Holloway property, indefinitely. Lenore listened. Lenore did not look surprised. Lenore had been in the business for 31 years. "You'll write features," she said. "I have a list." The piece ran the following Sunday. It did not mention Pierce by name. It was about a pattern, a town, a kind of door, and a kind of decision made at that door every weekend for years in places nobody had been writing about. Pierce read it at his kitchen table on Sunday morning. He had not asked to see it in advance, and Sutton had not offered. When he had asked her, the week before, whether he could read it first, she had answered without looking up. "If I let you read it first, it stops being journalism." He had said, "All right." A quiet Tuesday evening, after closing, he brought Bea to Laurel House. She sat at the bar in her stocking feet and drew a cardinal on the back of a tasting menu. Sutton let herself in through the side door with the key Pierce had given her the week before for no stated reason. She set a new copy of Birds of the Carolinas on the bar beside Bea without speaking. Bea looked up. Bea smiled. By October, Laurel House was on the cover of Southern Living's annual Top 10 list. The article was written by a journalist out of Atlanta who had never met Pierce Holloway and did not, in 1,200 words, refer to him once. The piece was about the room. The room was full every night. Sutton's long-form investigation ran in the November issue and won the Carolina Press Association Award for feature reporting in January. The plaque arrived in her mail in a padded envelope, and she put it in a drawer. They had not, by then, said anything to each other that would have required a word like together. She came by, often, after closing. The bar staff stopped greeting her at the door and started just nodding when she walked through. Bea, who had been learning to read the sound of footsteps the way some children learn to read music, knew Sutton's step on the lobby tile from 2 rooms away. A Saturday night in early November. The last guest had left at 10:40. The kitchen was cleaning down. Pierce and Sutton sat at the corner table by the bay window, the one Helena had chosen, the one with the view down Biltmore toward the south. Bea was asleep on the velvet banquet along the wall, her head on the bird book, a pencil on the floor where her fingers had let go of it. Pierce poured a half glass of Riesling. He poured himself a finger of water. They talked for a while about his mother. She had laid the first foundation stone of Laurel House in May of 1958, in heels, after refusing to let any of the men present do it for her. They talked about Bea, who had been asking for formal drawing lessons, and about a teacher Sutton knew at the River Arts District who might take her on. Then Sutton put her glass down. "Why didn't you tell me sooner who you were?" Pierce looked out the window. The streetlights on Biltmore came on as he watched, one and then the next, in the way they had every night of his life. "Because if you had known," he said, "I would not have known if you actually liked talking to me." She did not answer for a while. Outside, somewhere down toward Pack Square, a car door closed and an engine started. The sound traveled up the empty street and faded. The dishwasher in the kitchen sighed off its last cycle. The bay window held the room's reflection over the street. Their hands rested on the wood of the table 4 inches apart, then 3, then 2. His little finger and hers did not touch. They came to within 1/8 of an inch of touching, and then they stayed there. She nodded. Just once. It was enough. Pierce stood up. He bent down to the banquette and lifted Bea into his arms. She made a small noise against his collar, the half-formed shape of a word she had been holding in her sleep. He did not catch it. Sutton walked ahead of them to the door. She opened it. The 3 of them stepped out onto Biltmore Avenue. The brick was wet from a brief rain none of them had heard fall. The gold of the streetlights pooled on the brick and ran ahead of them up the sidewalk. Neither of them had been looking, but maybe that was exactly how it was supposed to happen.